So Toastmasters does two things well, and two things that are common to every Toastmasters club anywhere in the world. Two things: experiential learning, evaluations. Those are There's other elements they make up Toastmasters Club, but those are kind of the two important ones. By experiential learning, what I mean is that we learn by doing. We're kinetic creatures, and by doing things like stressing the night before we do a speech, agonizing through those feelings, and actually getting up in front of a crowd and doing it, we face our fears, and by doing so, we learn skills that we need for the real world, personally, professionally, otherwise. The evaluation is the kind of more important bit, or the part that I'd like to talk about. So, evaluation, people think when they hear evaluation that it means criticizing, that somehow by offering somebody feedback, you're doing them a disservice. And what some people mean by feedback, fair enough. So I've worked for people, I've dated people that their version of feedback was just thinly veiled criticism. But proper evaluation is a recognition of the positive and constructive things that a person is doing while combining it with elements that they could use to improve what they're doing fundamentally. So it is a full picture, effectively. The reason why it's so important is because, left to your own devices, you do a terrible job of evaluating yourself. Let's be honest. If you were going to treat somebody else the way that you treat yourself, and perhaps I'm extrapolating from my own experience, you'd get written up for bullying and harassment every time. We are terrible to ourselves. We do not give ourselves the benefit of the doubt, and ultimately, that's why we interact with other people, is to gain that feedback. So I'll give you an example. I was chatting with a young fellow online, and this young fellow did his very first speech in Toastmasters, very proud of himself. But he was so nervous that after he did this speech, he went to the washroom, he sat down, and went to the washroom. And in doing so, realized that he was still so anxious and still so keyed up that he forgot to take his underwear off. Now, I've never had the experience. That sounds like something that would happen after a drunken night out. However, he was telling this story, and he was telling the story because it was the bones of another speech he was delivering. And bless his heart, he asked me what I thought about it. And I was forced into this position of trying to constructively say that I appreciate him having the self-confidence and the vulnerability to express himself. However, that speech itself might not land too well in a room with his boss and his retired mother that was coming to listen to him speak. Oh, bless his heart, though. What a wonderful, what a wonderful thing to be able to confess to a room full of people. Anyways, if you don't get that feedback from somebody, to him it sounded great. Oh yeah, this is going to be a great speech. People are going to be telling the story of this for 20 years. And they might be. They very well might be, because he was determined he was going to go tell that speech no matter what feedback I gave him. But we don't really recognize sometimes our own blind spots. And that's an example of not recognizing a negative blind spot, but there's lots of positive things that people do. Lots of people are very good. I mean, you've been speaking for how many years? You're an adult, so clearly a lot of years. You have some elements that are very good and unique to yourself. You have perspectives that nobody else in this world has. And recognizing that, embracing that, running with that is hugely positive and helps a person grow. So I truly believe that the evaluation component of what we do, forcing that in every interaction at a meeting, letting people recognize, praising them, applauding them for the good things that they do. And trust me, even when you're being your hardest on yourself, like, there are lots of good things in terms of what you do. Anyways, I wanted to share that. I wanted to tell that story, just because I thought that it just resonated with me. I just love people, you know. The stories that you hear from people for the first time when they have the guts and they start to see that moment where the fear kind of goes away and they realize that the only thing that's stopping you from, like, getting on a podium and speaking is just yourself more than anything. And, you know, there's things that you feel strongly about and passionately about that nobody else on this earth does. And it could be anything. It can be old growth forests, it can be dog walking, it can be all sorts of crazy things. My personal experience, I mean, I'm missing a third of my lungs, for example, or I have a handicapped kid. So the things that I see on a daily basis and the way that I feel about them are different than you are. And we both have that value to share with each other. That's making those connections, sharing those stories is how we grow together and how we grow as people. So anyways, Toastmasters, experiential learning, evaluation. Thank you.